My sister told my mom she was dying, but her story fell apart when I exposed her fake illness and how she was trying to take the entire inheritance for herself. I stood there, a handmade gift clutched in my hands, as my own mother told me, with casual indifference, not to come to her 58th birthday party. Her reasoning? My stepsister, a woman I barely knew, felt uneasy around me. That's when I knew something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. A betrayal so deep it threatened to erase 3 decades of my life. I'd spent 3 months making that gift. A photo album, spanning her entire life, filled with pictures I'd painstakingly gathered from relatives across the country. And she just casually dropped the bomb. "What do you mean, don't come?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's your birthday. I've been planning my speech for weeks." My mother sighed, a sound heavy with exasperation. "Samantha feels uneasy around you. She needs her day to bond with me without competition." Samantha, 30 years old, had been my stepsister for all of 10 months, ever since Mom married David, her father. Competition? Daughter of yours? Your daughter, who has attended every single birthday for 32 years. The other end of the line was silent. Then she said something that made my stomach churn. "The thing is, you've had 32 years. Samantha needs time to catch up." I drove to her house immediately. It was 9 p.m., but the lights were on, and I could see people inside, decorating. My Aunt Lisa's car was in the driveway. My cousin Chris's truck too. They were prepping for the party tomorrow. My stepfather, David, answered the door, looking utterly embarrassed. "Maybe you should go home," he muttered, trying to close it, but I saw my mom in the living room, hanging streamers with Samantha. "Mom," I yelled, and she froze. Samantha whispered something to her, and my mom just nodded, then walked to the door. She didn't invite me in. "This was discussed," she stated flatly. "Tomorrow is Samantha's big day." I ignored her, my eyes scanning the Happy 65th Birthday Mom banner. Except it only had 2 people, my mother and Samantha. I looked for my own pictures among the happy photo displays around the room. There were none. Every single one showed my mom with Samantha or David. "I lost 32 years," Samantha chirped from the living room. "So I made them." My mom beamed at her, like nothing was wrong. "She labored over them," she said, as if I hadn't just been erased. Aunt Lisa appeared at the door, looking confused. "What's going on? Why is Rachel outside?" My mother stiffened. "Rachel won't be coming tomorrow. She agreed it's best." I agreed to nothing. I shot back. Lisa looked between us, her expression horrified. "Emma, are you crazy? This is your daughter." Samantha emerged from the living room, clutching her chest. "She triggers me. Her presence brings back childhood trauma." Everyone stopped. "Trauma? What?" "We only met last year." Samantha started to cry, right on cue. "You resemble my childhood bully. Not your fault, but you prevent me from healing." This was the first I'd ever heard of this. My mother immediately wrapped her arms around Samantha. "She needs help," she declared. "Genuine family support." Aunt Lisa actually laughed, but it wasn't amused. "Emma, you've gone insane. Your real family is Rachel." My mom's face hardened. "Now David and Samantha are my family. I chose family. Some ties are stronger than blood." Chris emerged from the kitchen, looking stunned. "And Emma, the restaurant needs a final count for tomorrow." "How many people?" My mother looked at me, then back at Chris. 40. Everyone but Rachel." Chris looked dumbfounded. "You're excluding your own daughter?" David then stepped forward. "It benefits everyone." I didn't understand, but Rachel did. "Mom, what is happening? Did Samantha say something to you? Is she threatening you?" Samantha burst into louder sobs. "See? Again, she attacks me. This is my point." My mother rushed inside after her. David stood at the door. "You should leave. You've upset them." Lisa grabbed my arm, pulling me toward her car. "Come on." Now, sitting in her driveway, Lisa pulled out her phone. "Last week, your mother changed her will. Samantha gets everything. The house, savings, and Grandma's jewelry." My blood ran cold. Grandma's jewelry. My grandmother had left me specific pieces, which my mother was holding until my wedding. "You know this how?" I asked, my voice strained. "She asked me to witness it," Lisa replied, shaking her head. I told her she was wrong, and I refused. Then she announced Samantha's terminal diagnosis. "Terminal? She has what?" Lisa shrugged. She wouldn't say, but Samantha needed motherly love before dying. "You had decades, but Samantha has months or weeks." Felt sick. As she dies, she wants my mom to herself? Lisa, I said, my voice heavy with disbelief. I doubt she's dying. Your mother believes her, even though I think she's lying. To my cousin. We drove straight to Diane's house. Diane was a close family friend, practically an aunt. We pulled out laptops. Lisa tapped furiously, trying to access the hospital database. The screen loaded agonizingly slowly, searching for Samantha's file. Lisa's expression changed when it appeared. She scrolled through empty pages. No chemotherapy records, no oncology appointments, no treatments. Only 2 visits were listed. 2 years ago for a sprained wrist, and last March for the flu. Lisa printed everything she could without breaking privacy laws. Every page showed she was very much alive. We drove back to Lisa's house after midnight, the evidence heavy on my lap. Chris, who had been waiting for us, punched the wall when we showed him the printouts. Lisa made coffee, but none of us drank it. We sat around her kitchen table, pondering our next steps. Chris suggested hiring someone to investigate Samantha's past. If she lied about being terminal, she probably lied about other things. Diane knew a fraud-fighting private investigator, Dylan Padette, from her courthouse job. Even though it was almost 12:30 a.m., he answered on the 3rd ring. Diane explained the situation while Chris and I listened. Dylan offered to meet us the next day and start investigating Samantha's background immediately. We couldn't sleep, so we kept making lists of Samantha's suspicious behaviors. The terminal illness that changed depending on who she talked to. How she isolated my mother from anyone who questioned her. How quickly everything happened after my mother married David. By sunrise, we had 2 pages of red flags that should have been obvious. At 9 a.m., Diane called Sarah Nelson, a family lawyer who handled elder manipulation cases. Sarah agreed to review our data and meet us that afternoon. We brought the hospital records, the timeline, and all our concerns about Samantha's behavior to her office. Sarah spent 2 hours reviewing every document, asking about my mother's relationship with David and Samantha's quick takeover. She said proving undue influence in court was difficult, but possible. The rapid will change helped us. The fact that my mother had abandoned me after 32 years helped us. Samantha's history of health deception helped us. Sarah said we needed more evidence before suing, but we had enough to start. Now we had to document every interaction with my mother and Samantha. She told us to record calls if possible. Save text messages. Keep a record of Samantha's growing control over my mother's finances and decisions. Sarah warned us that manipulators like Samantha doubled down when threatened, making cases like this worse. I called my mother 3 times the following week, but she never answered. I left messages saying I loved her and wanted to talk. I texted to check on her. Nothing. On the 8th day, David finally picked up. He told me Samantha had a health crisis after the party and my mother was too stressed to deal with me right now. I asked what kind of health crisis, and David got vague. Something about her heart, or maybe her lungs. He wasn't sure, but it was serious, and seeing me would make it worse. I asked to speak with my mother directly, but David said she was resting. He hung up before I could say anything else. I called Diane immediately and told her about the conversation. She added it to our timeline, showing how Samantha used fake medical emergencies to keep my mother isolated. Dylan called 2 days later with information that made my hands shake. Samantha's supposed terminal illness changed depending on who she was talking to. He'd interviewed 3 of my mother's neighbors and one of my cousins who'd spoken to Samantha at the party. She told my mother it was cancer. She told my cousin Olivia it was a rare heart condition. She told the neighbor across the street it was a blood disorder that doctors couldn't treat. Dylan said the inconsistencies were obvious once you started looking for them. A real dying person would have a consistent diagnosis and treatment plan. Samantha's story shifted to match whatever got her the most sympathy from each person. Dylan was still digging into her background, but already he'd found gaps in her employment history and addresses that didn't match what she'd told David. He said he'd have more information in a few days. Lisa contacted Mia Matthews at the hospital. Mia was an administrator Lisa trusted who'd worked there for 15 years. Lisa explained the situation carefully, staying within privacy regulations while asking Mia to verify whether Samantha had been treated for any serious conditions. Mia spent 3 days checking records across their hospital network. She found nothing. No cancer treatment at any of their facilities, no heart condition monitoring, no blood disorder diagnosis. Mia provided official documentation that we could use legally, showing Samantha had never been a patient for any of the terminal illnesses she claimed. The documents were stamped and signed and completely legitimate. Mia told Lisa she'd seen cases like this before, where people faked illnesses to manipulate family members. She said the hospital took fraud seriously, and if Samantha had used fake medical documents to deceive anyone, we should report it. Chris went to my mother's house to check on her, because she still wasn't answering my calls. He found her in the backyard, pulling weeds, while Samantha sat on the porch drinking lemonade. Chris said my mother looked thin and tired, but she smiled when she saw him. He tried to ask how she was doing, but Samantha interrupted constantly. Every time Chris mentioned me, Samantha would say something about her health or her stress levels. My mother seemed completely under Samantha's spell. She kept talking about making every moment count, because Samantha didn't have much time left. She said Samantha needed her full attention and support. David stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable, but he didn't contradict anything Samantha said. Chris tried 3 times to ask questions about Samantha's diagnosis or treatment plan. Each time, both my mother and David shut him down immediately. My mother said it was private. David said it wasn't his place to share. Samantha just smiled and changed the subject. Chris felt worse after leaving. I drove to my mother's the next morning. I knocked and waited. Samantha answered in my mother's robe. She treated me like a stranger selling something. I asked whether my mother was home. Sam leaned against the door frame, clutching her chest. She gasped, saying seeing me stressed her out and could cause a health emergency. Her hand pressed against her heart. It looked staged. And then I realized I was watching a performance she'd done many times. The staged illness, dramatic symptoms, the convenient timing. Samantha had learned this routine to look natural. Behind her, I saw David, looking guilty but silent. I demanded to speak to my mother directly. David entered, blocking the doorway. He said my mother was sleeping and couldn't be disturbed. I tried to pass him, but he held firm. My stomach turned as Samantha watched with a slight smile. Her health was fine. She lived. She was having fun. Samantha's smile grew as David closed the door in my face. I waited 8 minutes on the porch for my mother. She never came. Lisa and I discussed legal options with Sarah again at her office. We brought everything from the past 2 weeks: hospital records, inconsistent illness stories, Chris's observations about my mother's behavior, Mia's documentation. Sarah carefully reviewed everything before suggesting options. She said we needed more proof before acting. Right now, we had enough to raise questions, but not prove undue influence in court. She suggested documenting every interaction, including dates, times, and witnesses, to show Samantha's growing control over my mother's decisions and finances. Sarah said cases like this required patience, because we needed to prove a pattern of manipulation, not isolated incidents. She warned us that confronting my mother now would likely backfire, because Samantha had her completely convinced. Dylan called that night with more news. He'd found Phyllis Hamilton, who worked with Samantha at a downtown insurance company 5 years ago. Dylan found her through employment records, and she agreed to meet with us. Phyllis promised to bring her daughter, Danielle, who went to high school with Samantha and had important stories. A coffee shop near Lisa's house was our meeting spot the next day. I couldn't sleep that night, wondering what they would say and if it would save my mother from Samantha's plans. I met Phyllis and Danielle at the coffee shop the next morning. Phyllis, in her 50s, had tired eyes. Danielle sat with her mother, holding a paper folder. We got drinks in a quiet corner booth. Phyllis showed me photos of Samantha from their insurance company 5 years ago. Samantha was younger, but her smile was the same. Samantha had joined their team claiming she needed to pay for cancer treatments. According to Phyllis, everyone felt sorry for her and donated when she mentioned medical bills. Fundraisers and bake sales were held by the company. Samantha raised over $14,000 from coworkers who believed they were saving her life over 5 months. Then, the husband of a hospital employee mentioned he'd never seen Samantha for treatment. A quiet company investigation revealed Samantha was never sick. She'd planned fake doctor appointments and treatments while spending money on vacations and shopping. Management offered her a choice: return the money and leave quietly, or face charges. Samantha returned most of it and vanished a week later. Phyllis felt stupid for believing the lies, but Samantha's stories of pain, fear, and gratitude were so convincing. Danielle pulled out old social media screenshots from her folder. She showed high school photos of Samantha with different groups of students. Danielle said Samantha targeted lonely or troubled kids. She'd quickly become their best friend and discover their weaknesses. Samantha would then cause a crisis to gain attention. She sometimes accused family of abuse. She sometimes lied about illness or threats. She lied and slandered friends until they fought. Samantha then joined a new group and started over. Danielle showed me a photo of Olivia, who resembled me. Similar features and hair color. Samantha's junior year target was Olivia, until Olivia discovered the manipulation and alerted others. Samantha claimed Olivia had bullied her for months and ruined her life. Samantha cried convincingly, so most people believed her. Olivia switched schools to avoid harassment. Danielle thought the story about me looking like Samantha's childhood bully was fabricated. Samantha just needed a reason to kick me out so she could have my mother. It made me sick to listen. Samantha didn't just appear in my mother's life. She'd planned and calculated how to steal everything from me. Dylan leaned forward. Samantha probably watched your mother and David for weeks before David introduced her. She would have known their habits and emotional weaknesses. She'd know your mother was vulnerable after her divorce and eager to please her new husband. She would have noticed David's guilt or desire to be a good father. Samantha studied them like a predator before attacking. Phyllis and Danielle gave us everything, including contact information for former coworkers who remembered Samantha's scam. Chris commented during lunch on how Samantha had manipulated the office. He said she played people against each other while posing as an innocent victim in need of protection. The pattern was constant. Gain trust by being vulnerable. Use manufactured crisis to extract resources. Disappear before people comprehend. I was overwhelmed with evidence when we left the coffee shop. After Diane drove us home, we categorized everything. Financial scams, fake illnesses, emotional manipulation, multi-victim behavior. My mother believed every lie about Samantha. Despite the growing case, my Uncle James called that night to say he'd try to talk to David at the downtown hardware store. James went there because David shopped there every Saturday morning. He asked David for a private conversation in the lumber section. David was pale and wouldn't talk about Samantha or my mother. James said David looked scared and trapped, not angry or defiant. When James mentioned Samantha, his hands shook. David kept looking around as if someone was watching. He almost fled when James demanded answers. James thought Samantha might control David, too. She may have threatened or blackmailed him. David's fear wasn't for his daughter. He looked like a man who'd made a big mistake and couldn't fix it. Diane contacted the lawyer who observed my mother's will change. She called his office after finding him in county records. Diane carefully explained the situation to the lawyer, who was reluctant to discuss client matters. She cited fraud and elder abuse. The lawyer finally admitted that my mother seemed anxious and rushed during the appointment. She kept checking her phone and the window. He asked if she was sure about the changes, and she said yes, but her voice wavered. The lawyer saw a car outside his office all along, a driver watching the building. He thought it odd, but didn't question it. Now he realized Samantha probably made sure my mother changed her will. A statement from the lawyer was offered if we sued. I spent the weekend going through boxes of old photos and documents in my apartment closet. My mother sent me personalized birthday cards every year. Photos from my high school graduation, showing her pride. Photos from 30 years of family vacations. She wrote me letters about missing me in college. I created a relationship timeline by chronologically organizing everything. 32 years of proof I wasn't Samantha's problem. My mother loved and was proud in every photo. Every card confirmed our deep bond. Samantha wanted to erase everything and replace it with her story. I made copies of the most important items and presented our actual history. Chris found something disturbing on social media that weekend. Samantha posted about her dying mother on multiple platforms. She detailed how she was cherishing every moment with my mother in her final months in emotional posts. She described their special relationship. She posted photos of them looking like the perfect mother-daughter pair. No mention of me in the posts. Samantha believed my mother had one loving daughter. Random strangers who didn't know they were reading fiction offered sympathy and support. Samantha even started a fundraising page for my mother's medical bills. Even though my mother was healthy, Dylan received Chris's screenshots and added them to our growing evidence. The news Dylan gave me on Monday made my hands shake. He found Samantha's 10-year-old ex-husband, Noah. Noah divorced Samantha after discovering she'd faked a pregnancy and miscarriage to manipulate him. Noah told Dylan Samantha claimed to be pregnant early in their marriage. She showed him fake ultrasound photos and talked about their baby often. Noah enthusiastically bought baby furniture and prepared a nursery. Samantha announced she'd miscarried and needed time to grieve. She used the fabricated tragedy to manipulate Noah and demand money for medical bills and therapy. Noah found the fake ultrasound photos online and discovered the truth. Samantha had downloaded and printed stock photos. He confronted her, and she confessed without remorse. She laughed and called him stupid for believing her. Noah divorced her immediately and offered to detail her deception. He wanted to prevent Samantha from hurting others like she did him. We took everything we'd collected over the past 2 weeks to Sarah on Tuesday. Hospital records, witness statements from Phyllis and Danielle, Samantha's scams on previous families, Noah's statement about the fake pregnancy, Chris's social media posts, and my mother's relationship timeline. Sarah meticulously took notes and asked questions. She said, "We had a strong case for undue influence on the will." The rapid change and Samantha's history of manipulation established a pattern. Depending on Samantha and my mother's financial transactions, we could also charge fraud. Sarah suggested we try to reach my mother again before filing a lawsuit. She suggested a letter that presented all the evidence in a clear, factual manner, which my mother couldn't ignore, like a phone call or visit. Diane offered to write the letter that night. Her hours of drafting and revising ensured every point was clear and supported by evidence. We revealed Samantha's history in the letter. Phyllis, Noah, and other willing victims' contact information was included. It described fake terminal illnesses, fake pregnancies, and targeting vulnerable people. Financial fraud and social media deception were described. Diane copied the most crucial evidence and sent it with the letter. She sent everything certified mail the next morning to prove my mother received it. We had to see if my mother would finally see Samantha for who she was. My mother didn't reply for 3 days. Chris called me the third night to say he saw Emma at the grocery store that afternoon. She looked terrible, thin, like she'd lost weight quickly, pale and drawn. Chris tried to talk to her, but she saw him coming and ran out of the store, leaving her cart half full in the aisle. She didn't look back when he called her. That image haunted me all night. My mother fleeing her nephew in a grocery store. Samantha had twisted her up so much she couldn't face family. The next morning, Diane's phone rang while we had coffee at her kitchen table. Her face changed immediately when she answered. Her phone was on speaker, and she shouted, "James." James Turner had advised my mother financially for 20 years. His services included retirement account management, tax planning, and investment advice. They had volunteered together years earlier, so Diane knew him. James sounded worried. "I've been trying to reach Emma for 2 weeks about some unusual account activity, but she wouldn't answer my calls or emails. Large withdrawals and transfers to unfamiliar accounts. Everything since she married David." He was worried enough to contact family because something felt wrong. Diane requested that he meet with us to explain everything. James agreed immediately and offered to visit Diane that afternoon. He arrived with a briefcase full of papers at 2 o'clock. He spread account statements and transaction records at Diane's dining room table. I was sickened by the numbers. In the past 5 months, Emma had withdrawn over $37,000. It started with a few hundred, then $4,500, $7,500, $10,500. James cited a statement showing Emma and Samantha opened a joint account 2 weeks ago. He wasn't informed and didn't know about it until the transfer records. Money was transferred from Emma's retirement account to this joint account and then disappeared. James said he'd advised Emma since her 30s. He knew her spending and financial goals. This behavior was uncharacteristic. She always handled money carefully and consulted him before big purchases. Now she was draining accounts without telling him and ignoring his concerns. He asked us if we knew, because it looked like someone was systematically stealing from her financially. I showed James Samantha's hospital records, victim statements, and the multi-family fraud pattern. He reclined and shook his head. He had seen con artists drain older people's accounts before. Romance or investment scams were typical. He'd never seen it with a relative, but the pattern was the same. Trust, urgency, isolate victim from advisors, extract money, disappear. Diane called Dylan to come over immediately. He arrived 30 minutes later, and James showed him the financial records. Dylan said he could legally get bank records now that we had fraud evidence. He made some calls at the table and subpoenaed Emma's account and transaction histories by day's end. The bank records arrived 2 days later. Dylan spread them on Diane's dining room table, and we read them all. The pattern was worse than James said. Emma's funds were transferred to Samantha's 3 accounts. James found a joint account. Samantha opened 2 personal accounts with Emma's address. Samantha transferred families, just like Dylan had found before. She started with small amounts to avoid suspicion, then increased them as she gained control. Samantha convinced an elderly man to take out a second mortgage and send her the money. Everything was gone. It was strange to be right and horrified. We were right about Samantha all along. She stole from my mother and others. However, seeing the numbers and knowing how much damage she'd done made me want to vomit. $37,000 gone. Samantha had just received my mother's 30-year-old retirement savings. James came that night after Diane called. He meticulously took notes and asked about dates and amounts. He said, "We had enough evidence to sue to protect Emma's assets. We could get a restraining order to freeze accounts and stop transfers. We could ask the court to overturn the will change for undue influence. We may be able to charge fraud and theft." James said it would take time in court proceedings and humiliate my mother in public. Diane suggested trying another method first. Bring everything to David privately to see if hard evidence would break Samantha's hold on him. David's honesty could help us stop Samantha without dragging my mother into a public legal battle. It was risky, but we tried. Chris discovered David's workplace, a supply company in Industrial Town, where David was a manager. Diane and I drove there Tuesday during his lunch break. He emerged from the building after we waited in the parking lot. I exited the car and called him. David paled at me. He turned and walked toward the building. I ran after him and grabbed his arm. I told him we had proof Samantha had stolen from multiple families and was stealing from Emma. David stopped walking. In the parking lot, he stared at the ground. Diane stopped us and suggested we talk privately in David's car. David walked to his car and unlocked it without speaking. We all entered. David drove. I sat in the passenger seat. Diane in the back. I took out the folder with our collected items, previous victim statements, bank records showing transfers, hospital documentation proving Samantha had never been treated for a terminal illness, and her behavior timeline. While reading each page, David's hands shook. Diane identified each person and explained Samantha's actions. The fake pregnancy, cancer diagnosis, stolen money, and broken relationships. David cried with his head in his hands. His body shook with deep sobs. He felt trapped, despite knowing something was wrong for weeks. Samantha had threatened him. She warned him that she would tell Emma that he had hit her, threatened her, and tried to control her if he didn't support her story about being his daughter and terminally ill. David feared divorce and being accused of something he never did. How to fight someone who lied so easily was beyond him. David's next statement made everything worse. He had been approached by Samantha before meeting Emma. She found him and claimed to be his long-lost daughter from a brief relationship decades earlier. She had plausible info about his past. She knew his residence and workplace. She knew his dates' names. David wanted to believe her because he regretted never having kids. For confirmation, he tested paternity. Results were negative. Samantha wasn't his biological daughter, but she'd already gained his trust. She knew everything about him, met his friends, and lived in his apartment. David questioned her about the paternity test. Samantha didn't act surprised or upset. She smiled and said she never thought he was her father. He seemed lonely, and she needed a place to stay. Then she told him she found Emma online and thought she'd be a good target. She threatened to ruin David's reputation if he didn't help her get close to Emma. She recorded private conversations. She accessed his email and bank accounts. She implied he was dangerous and would be arrested. David tried to leave her, but she followed. Samantha entered the relationship when he started dating Emma. She convinced Emma she was David's daughter and wanted to join their new family. Emma was completely with Samantha when David realized what was happening. Samantha isolated Emma from me and other family members, leaving David helpless. He watched Emma change her will and withdraw money. He knew it was wrong, but Samantha had warned him she would destroy him if he exposed her. I wanted to scream at David for allowing this. To watch my mother be manipulated and do nothing while Samantha destroyed our family. But as I saw him crying in his car with shaking hands, he was just another person Samantha had trapped. Diane must have seen my face because she put her hand on my arm and whispered to David about what to do. She said the only solution was to tell Emma the truth together. Everyone, with all our evidence. David wiped his face and nodded. but his voice was rough when he spoke. Samantha was getting worse, so we had to be careful. She was acting strangely, more angry and less careful about hiding her true self as money ran out. David thought she was planning something big before she disappeared. Maybe getting Emma to sign over the house or take out a huge loan. He heard Samantha on the phone twice this week discussing property values and equity loans. Diane took out her phone and called immediately. She contacted Emma's 30-year neighbors, the Hendersons. They had watched me grow up. Diane quickly explained everything to Mrs. Henderson, that Emma was in trouble. We needed her alone, without Samantha, to tell her the truth. Mrs. Henderson had noted Emma's changes. How thin she looked. How she only went outside with Samantha anymore. Samantha's guard dog-like watch over Emma. They offered immediate assistance. The plan was simple. Mrs. Henderson would call Emma the next morning to invite her for coffee. A short visit between old friends. David said Samantha went to the bank on Wednesday mornings instead of doctor appointments. We might have an hour. Diane and I waited in the Hendersons' living room the next morning. My stomach ached and my hands shook. Mr. Henderson watched the window and reported Emma walking up the path alone at 10:15. Mrs. Henderson welcomed Emma in for coffee, as promised, with a big smile. My mother entered and said she couldn't stay long. Then she saw Diane and me on the couch. Her entire face changed. As she turned back toward the door, Mr. Henderson was there, not blocking her, but present. Mrs. Henderson gently touched Emma's arm and asked her to listen for 8 minutes. Only that was needed. 8 minutes. Emma, looking trapped and scared, sat across from us in the chair. I spoke before she left. I told her I loved her, was scared for her, and wasn't angry, despite having every right to be. I kept going, despite my broken voice. Diane spread papers on the coffee table between us, from the folder we brought. She presented each piece methodically, like a court case. Previous families of Samantha. The fake terminal illness, with hospital records showing she was never treated. Emma's bank statements, showing $37,000 transferred out. David's admission that Samantha wasn't his daughter after the paternity test. That Samantha had also threatened and manipulated him. Emma's face changed so much I couldn't keep up. First shock, then denial as she shook her head like we were wrong. She became angry when she said Samantha was sick and we were attacking a dying woman. Diane kept presenting proof. Former Samantha victim statements. Following timelines showing the same pattern. Finally, my mother's expression changed. A horrible realization spread across her face like a nightmare. She kept saying it, but she's dying. But she's dying. Until Diane gave her the hospital records. Official proof Samantha had never been treated for a terminal illness. No heart disease, cancer, rare blood disorder, nothing. My mother cried. Then she sobbed, her body shaking. She kept going. Between sobs, she said she'd felt something was wrong for weeks, but couldn't see it because seeing it would mean facing her crime against me. How poorly she treated her daughter. She was foolish to trust a stranger over her family. Mrs. Henderson rubbed Emma's back, handing her tissues. My mother's red, swollen eyes filled me with horror. Horror at herself, her actions, and what she almost lost. The phone rang in Emma's purse. She disregarded it. It rang repeatedly. It then buzzed with texts. David showed us Samantha's messages on his phone. They weren't like the sweet, dying daughter act we'd seen. These messages were cruel, asking where Emma was, why she wasn't answering, telling her not to be with that ungrateful daughter, and threatening another health crisis if she didn't come home. Each message became more aggressive and controlling, revealing a side of Samantha Emma had never seen before. My mother gasped when another text called her stupid and said she was wasting Samantha's time. As Emma read each message, her hand shook. Samantha wasn't sick and worried about her mother. She was upset about losing control. Emma answered when the phone rang again. She spoke calmly when she said she was with friends and would return later. Samantha's response was loud enough to hear without speakerphone. The voice was not Samantha's sweet, weak one. It was cruel and enraged. She called Emma ungrateful and stupid, said she deserved to die alone because she wasted Samantha's time. She no longer played the sweet dying daughter. Emma's face turned white as Samantha yelled on the phone. Then Emma surprised us all. She turned on the speaker and placed the phone on the coffee table for everyone to hear. Samantha's real voice filled the Hendersons' living room as she removed her mask. She shouted how easy Emma was to manipulate. She was pitiful to trust a stranger over her daughter. how she should have made more money before Emma's family interfered. Samantha's hateful words increased with each sentence. She boasted about faking terminal illness, about her past mistreatment of stupid, lonely, love-hungry women, about how she almost signed over the house before we ruined it. She said Emma deserved everything bad because she was weak and worthless. Mom was frozen, listening to everything. Listening to her choice over me revealed her true self. Hearing our proof that everything we told her was true, Samantha shouted, threatened, and revealed her plans. How she first targeted David. How she'd researched Emma online and knew what to press. How she'd leave with everything after draining the accounts and refinancing the house. She couldn't stop talking from anger. She kept confessing everything she did. David took his phone from his pocket and recorded silently. Holding it up, he allowed the microphone to catch every word spoken. Samantha raged about the fake diagnosis and researching Emma's finances online before David introduced them. She described the other families she'd scammed and their payouts. She said Emma was the easiest target because she needed love after her divorce. After copying Emma's bank account information, she boasted about how easy money transfers were. David held the phone steady while recording through his shaking hand and let Samantha confess everything. She confessed her entire plan because she was so angry. Samantha hung up after calling Emma one last time after almost 8 minutes of recording. My mother froze on the couch, staring at nothing. Her face looked empty, like something inside her had broken. She slowly turned to me, tears in her eyes, but they were clear now. I let her take my hand. She apologized repeatedly, even though I wanted to leave. She said she understood if I could never forgive her, but she needed me to know that Samantha had manipulated her, and she was sorry for choosing someone else over her daughter. She cried while speaking, releasing broken, painful words. She believed Samantha's stories because she was lonely after the divorce and wanted to feel needed. She apologized for the will, the party, and the terrible words she said to me. Diane held Emma and let her cry. While Diane called Sarah, I called the police. I told the operator we had a recorded fraud and elder abuse confession. I played part of the recording over the phone, and the operator's voice changed immediately. She requested Emma's address and dispatched officers immediately. After Diane finished talking to Sarah, she said she was driving to the police station to meet us. I was instructed to save and not delete the recording. She said officers would arrive at Emma's house in minutes to stop Samantha from leaving or destroying evidence. David gave them his house key and said Samantha was probably alone. The operator said 2 units were coming and advised us not to go to the house. At the neighbor's house, we awaited updates. Emma stood shaking and apologized to everyone. She got water and tissues from her neighbors while we stared at our phones in their living room. A police officer called David 30 minutes later. They arrived home to find Samantha packing suitcases in the bedroom. Her bed was covered in my grandmother's jewelry. Her purse contained Emma's checkbook, credit cards, and cash. The officer said Samantha claimed she lived there and was organizing her things, but they found Emma's financial documents and notebooks with account numbers and passwords in her bag. She was arrested immediately for theft and fraud. David was summoned to the station to give a statement and secure the house. Diane was called by the DA 2 days later. She reviewed the case and wanted to prosecute because Samantha's multi-state fraud made it federal. The recorded confession, physical evidence, and Samantha's history with other families supported their case. The district attorney said Samantha's former victims were being contacted for testimony. For court, 2 families agreed to share their experiences. She said such cases were hard to prove without solid evidence, but we had everything. Samantha had high bail due to flight risk. Samantha would remain in jail until the trial, which the district attorney estimated would take 5 months. Emma couldn't stay in Samantha's house after almost a year of manipulation. She took a bag to Diane's guest room. David handled police visits and evidence collection alone at home. He saw a therapist twice a week to deal with his guilt over Samantha hurting Emma and enabling her. Emma initially refused to talk to him, but after a week, she agreed to have coffee with him somewhere neutral. They spent 2 hours discussing Samantha's deception in a diner. David described the fake paternity test and Samantha's threats. Emma cried and said she knew he was trapped. They agreed to marriage counseling, but Emma wasn't ready to return home. Emma and Sarah met to reverse the will change. Emma appeared anxious and rushed during the signing, according to the lawyer who witnessed the coerced document. He said Samantha waited in the car outside his office the whole time, and Emma nervously checked her phone. Sarah filed paperwork to restore the original will that left everything to me, with provisions for future grandchildren. She said it would take weeks, but the quick change made reversal easier. Emma signed all the documents and told Sarah she wanted to protect me no matter what happened in our relationship. I visited my mother at Diane's the following week. We discussed everything for an hour in the backyard. Emma explained how Samantha cut her off from her loved ones. She said Samantha would cry when Emma visited me or other family members. She claimed an urgent health crisis requiring Emma's attention. She doubted my motives and suggested I only wanted the inheritance. Emma realized how stupid she was, but Samantha's manipulation felt real. My anger and hurt made me say it would take a long time to trust her again. Nodding, she said she understood. We agreed to meet weekly to fix our relationship. Emma and Lauren Lockwood began working 2 weeks after Samantha's arrest. Lauren specialized in family manipulation and had seen dozens like ours. She told Emma in their first session that Samantha was likely a skilled con artist who targeted people going through major life changes. New marriages made people vulnerable because they wanted blended families to work. Lauren believed Samantha had examined Emma's social media and public records before David introduced them. She'd researched the divorce and my mother's loneliness and tailored her approach. Emma learned from Lauren that manipulation didn't make her stupid or weak. Samantha intentionally exploited her humanity and trust. Emma asked me to join her in therapy during one of our visits. I thought about it for a few days before saying yes, but she needed to understand first. I said rebuilding trust would take months or years, and our relationship might never be the same again after she chose Samantha. I said I'd been erased from her life like I didn't matter, which hurt a lot. She sobbed and promised to prove her sorry for as long as it took. I agreed to joint sessions after she worked with Lauren individually. I needed to see real change before sitting with her and a therapist to repair our damage. The district attorney charged Samantha 2 days after her arrest. Major fraud, theft by deception, elderly financial exploitation. The list was 2 pages long. Samantha faced serious prison time if convicted on each count. According to the prosecutor, bail hearings were quick. Samantha appeared before the judge in an orange jumpsuit instead of her usual clothes. She tried crying, but the judge ignored her. Bail was $180,000. Samantha's public defender said it was too high, but the judge noted her history of fleeing victims. When people asked questions, she vanished from 3 states. Bail stood. Samantha returned to county jail for trial. Dr. Anderson treated couples with manipulation and abuse, including Emma and David. David drove to the first appointment alone because Emma wasn't ready to be with him. Emma joined him after a month of weekly visits. Dr. Anderson explained how Samantha targeted their new marriage's weaknesses. She exploited David's guilt over not knowing his daughter. She took advantage of Emma's post-divorce loneliness and need for attention. Diane said the sessions hurt. Emma and David realized how easily Samantha had divided them from those who cared about them. David requested a return home after 5 weeks. Emma agreed, but they kept separate bedrooms and went to therapy twice a week. Samantha had opened accounts worth $28,000 that the bank's fraud investigation recovered. Another $9,500 vanished. It went to clothes, trips, and expensive dinners instead of Emma's retirement savings. The bank manager called Emma to explain what they found and what was lost forever. Emma visited Diane's house the next day and offered to split the recovered money, my half and hers. I declined immediately. She needed her money after Samantha stole everything. Emma insisted. She said it was the least she could do after dumping me from her will and life. Diane later told me to take it, not because I needed the money, but because Emma needed to take action to fix things. The following week, I took $14,000. 2 weeks later, Diane hosted a small party, just close relatives. I recognized Emma's wooden box from my grandmother's dresser. On Diane's dining room table, she opened the lid. Wrapped in tissue paper was my grandmother's jewelry. The pearl necklace my grandfather gave her at their wedding. Her gold bracelet with tiny charms for each child. Every important family event, she wore diamond earrings. Mother's sapphire ring. Emma removed each piece slowly. She explained each item as she handed it over. Her voice broke at the charm bracelet. She nearly let Samantha sell these pieces, almost let her destroy her mother's physical memories. Chris, Diane, and others watched her cry. I I repacked the jewelry and hugged my mother. After months, it fixed something, but not everything. Samantha's trial was 4 months away. After 2 months, her lawyer offered a plea deal to the prosecutor. Samantha would confess to all charges for a proposed sentence. The prosecutor called Emma and me to discuss. We could request a jury trial, but there was risk. Samantha may get a sympathetic juror who believed her victimhood. A plea deal guarantees consequences: 5 years in state prison and restitution to Emma and the other scammed families. We accepted it together. Samantha testified 5 weeks later and confessed. The judge accepted the plea and sentenced her to 5 years. It wasn't enough. 5 years couldn't fix her damage to my mother-daughter relationship, but it was close to closure to see her handcuffed and taken away after she stopped pretending to be innocent. Emma planned nothing until Samantha was sentenced. She called everyone from the original party and invited them to her house for a small dinner. No party, just family. She wanted to celebrate her 58th birthday with her loved ones. 20 people, including me, attended. The air was heavy at first. Everyone knew what happened and had no idea what to do. Emma spoke briefly before we ate. She apologized to everyone for her behavior. The lonely woman said she let herself be manipulated because she wanted to be needed. It was no excuse to choose a stranger over her family. She said she stared at me when she apologized for erasing me from her life and promised to earn my trust. After she finished, people clapped quietly. Our dinner conversation avoided the elephant in the room. It felt real in a way the original party never would. The following Tuesday, my mother and I had coffee halfway between our houses. We sat outside despite the cold because public conversation was easier. I told her we needed boundaries to rebuild. Our weekly meeting was just the two of us. No David until I'm ready. No big family gatherings where I had to perform as okay. No pressure to forgive her faster than I could. Emma accepted everything. She said she knew our relationship might never be the same. I told her that was true and needed her to agree. We met weekly after that, sometimes for coffee, lunch, or a park walk near her house. Our conversation focused on her garden, my job, and the weather. We were learning to be together again without the baggage that had broken us. 2 months have passed since I stood on my mother's doorstep and was told not to attend her party. More careful, honest, and less automatic, my relationship with Emma changed. I learned that being someone's daughter didn't guarantee a choice when it mattered. I learned that family was about who showed up in hard times, not just blood. Diane called me frequently. She'd become much more maternal than an aunt. Chris and I had weekly dinners. Lisa and I saw movies in unexpected ways.